Doctors at a private Manhattan clinic called it terminal. But 6-year-old Caleb clutched his maid's hand and mouthed, "Help me." That moment changed everything. The hospital suite smelled like bleach and quiet despair. Machines blinked and beeped their steady rhythms around 6-year-old Caleb Miller. His body looked too small for the wheelchair, wrapped in blankets too big for his frail frame. His skin was pale, lips dry. Every breath came as a battle, shallow, labored, reluctant. Spencer Miller stood stiff as granite near the wall, hands clenched behind his back, jaw unmoving. Billionaire, CEO, power broker, a man who made global markets bend to his will. And yet here, in a hospital room with his dying son, he was utterly powerless. 5 specialists stood in a quiet row, like pallbearers in white coats. "I'm sorry, Mr. Miller," the lead doctor said, voice heavy. "There's nothing more we can do. The tumor's pressing harder on his airway. Surgery's too risky. The body isn't responding to meds." He paused, glancing at Caleb. "You may have a month, maybe less." Silence fell. Only the machines dared speak. Spencer didn't answer. He just reached out and placed a hand on Caleb's shoulder. Then he nodded once, curt and cold, like a man signing a business deal. But inside, everything collapsed. His mind screamed, "God, no. Not my boy. Take my company. Take everything. Just not him." But the heavens said nothing. He signed the hospice release forms with the same hand that once signed billion-dollar acquisitions. In the corner of the room, unnoticed by most, Amara Parker stood with quiet reverence, the newest housemaid. She wasn't dressed for this place, not in her plain sweater and work shoes. But something in her demeanor made her presence feel sacred. As the doctors filed out and Spencer gathered Caleb's things, Amara stepped forward, kneeling beside the wheelchair. She didn't flinch at the tubes. She didn't avoid Caleb's thinning hair or trembling fingers. She just took a soft cloth from her pocket and wiped his face with practiced care, not with pity, but with tenderness. "Hi there, little warrior," she whispered. Caleb's eyes fluttered open. Then, for the first time in over 2 weeks, he looked directly at someone. Right at her. It was only a moment, but it burned in Spencer's mind. Did he just... He shook it off. Coincidence. A reflex. The mind sees what the heart begs for. That night, back at the penthouse, the silence was thicker than the Manhattan skyline outside. Grief wrapped the walls like insulation. Spencer sat at the edge of his bed, fingers tangled in his hair. He'd stopped praying years ago, after his wife's accident. What was the point? Down the hall, Caleb's door was ajar. Amara knelt beside his bed, whispering softly, her hands on his forehead, her eyes closed. A small, worn Bible lay open beside her. She prayed aloud, her voice trembling with something between love and faith. "Jesus, you raised Lazarus. Just one word from you can wake Caleb up inside." And then a quiet giggle. Caleb smiled. "Before we jump in, make sure to hit the like button if you believe in second chances. Comment below and let us know where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a story that just might restore your faith in what's possible." Now let's dive into the story. The Miller penthouse stretched across the top of the building like a palace too large for the grief it now held. Silence echoed through its marble floors and glass walls. No music, no laughter, only the mechanical hum of the air system and the click of Spencer's polished shoes as he paced through rooms that used to be full of life. He'd thrown himself into emails and business calls that no longer mattered, anything to avoid thinking about hospice nurses and 1-month timelines. Down the hall, Caleb's room was the only space where someone, still breathed with hope. Amara moved quietly, but not like the rest of the staff, who tiptoed out of fear. She moved with purpose, intent, compassion. She had changed the sterile layout of the boy's room, removed the harsh lamps, opened the curtains, added soft textures, and a salt lamp that glowed like a candle. There were crayons now, a small worship playlist humming gently in the background. Every morning, she came in and greeted Caleb like he was whole. "Good morning, sweet warrior," she whispered as she folded his blankets. "The Lord is your strength today." She began noticing the patterns others missed, the way Caleb's fingers twitched slightly when music played, how his shoulders relaxed when she hummed in soft rhythm, how he responded to colors, smells, even her tone. This wasn't new to her. Years ago, she'd done the same for her little brother Micah. Doctors told their family he had behavior issues, that he needed discipline. But Amara knew better. She saw the way his eyes darted during storms, the way he flinched at loud voices. She learned to speak his language through patience and rhythm and love. And then, too soon, he was gone. A misdiagnosis. A seizure no one saw coming. She'd never trusted medical certainty again. Caleb stirred, lips dry, eyes blinking slow. "You're safe," she said, gently stroking his forehead. "Even now, you're held in God's hands. Do you know that?" His eyes flicked toward hers. A beat passed. He blinked. Once. Then again. Amara's heart skipped. "That's right," she whispered. "I see you." In the doorway, Spencer stood, unshaven, coffee in hand, tie loose around his neck. He watched the moment unfold in silence. Part of him wanted to believe it meant something, but hope was dangerous. Hope made you foolish. And Spencer Miller didn't survive by being foolish. She's good with him. One of the nurses had told him earlier. Too good, he'd thought. He cleared his throat. Amara turned. "Mr. Miller," she said gently. He nodded barely, just checking in. But when his eyes met hers, something raw flickered in them. Something breaking. "I'll be in my study," he muttered. As he turned away, Amara's hand remained on Caleb's chest, her thumb moving in slow, circular rhythm, like a prayer in motion. "I see you working, Lord," she whispered, "even when no one else does." Outside the window, dark clouds began to gather, and deep within Caleb's chest, he took a deeper breath than he had in days. By day 7, something had shifted in the Miller penthouse. The silence wasn't as heavy. Caleb's room held warmth now, sunlight spilling through gauzy curtains, soft music playing from a speaker tucked behind a shelf. Amara moved with the gentle rhythm of someone who believed healing was possible, even when the doctors didn't. "Today's a good day, Caleb," she whispered, sitting beside him with the children's Bible in her lap. "Let's read about the boy Jesus." He listened. "Just like you." She began reading in soft, expressive tones, pausing when his eyes blinked fast. Caleb didn't speak, but he mouthed something, a shape, a sound. Amara smiled. "You want to say Jesus?" He blinked again. Then, slowly, he reached for her arm and tapped it twice. Her breath caught. "You're communicating," she whispered. "You beautiful, brilliant boy." Later that afternoon, while the nurse stepped out, Amara retrieved a small handheld scanning device from her tote bag. It was outdated, no screen, no internet connection, but it was the same model her late brother Micah had used in his final year. A pattern tracker. It could detect micro-responses, skin temperature, heart rate fluctuations, minor sensory shifts. Caleb had been dismissed as non-responsive. But when she gently ran the scanner along his arm, his vitals changed ever so slightly when she sang. "You're responding to sound, not noise music," she thought. She grabbed her notepad and started charting rhythms, breathing rates, tapping responses. None of it would have passed a hospital trial, but she trusted it, because she'd seen this before. That evening, Spencer stood just outside Caleb's door, arms folded, watching. A laugh, clear and small, burst from inside. Spencer stepped in fast, stunned. Was that? Caleb smiled. A real smile. And Amara? Tears streaked her cheeks. He laughed at the story. The Good Samaritan. Spencer swallowed hard. He hadn't heard that sound in months. Not since his wife's funeral. The next morning, tension began to rise. "You're not trained for this," the head nurse snapped, catching Amara at the kitchen counter. "We appreciate your spirit, but you're overstepping." "I'm just doing what I was hired to do," Amara said, calm but firm. "Care, you're making the rest of us look incompetent." Amara didn't respond. She didn't have to, because at that moment, Spencer walked in. "She stays," he said flatly. "Whatever she's doing, it's working." The nurse's eyes narrowed. "But, no buts. I'm paying top dollar for results. She's getting them." As the nurse left in a huff, Spencer turned to Amara. "What's different about you?" he asked quietly. She met his eyes, steady. "I see the boy, not just the diagnosis." He looked away, suddenly fragile. "I used to see him too," he murmured. "Before everything." She stepped forward. "It's not too late." But Spencer didn't reply. Instead, he turned and left the room, his posture stiff, his shoulders heavier than before. In the silence that followed, Caleb's hand found hers again, and somewhere deep in Amara's spirit, she felt it. This wasn't just recovery. It was revival. The penthouse was quiet again, but this time, it wasn't the silence of despair. It was the kind of stillness that surrounds something sacred. Caleb slept peacefully in his bed, his chest rising with slow, even breaths, a worship lullaby playing low from the corner speaker. Amara sat cross-legged on the floor, her back against the wall, a borrowed medical tablet glowing in her hands. One of the night nurses, less skeptical than the rest, had let her access Caleb's recent scanned files under the guise of tidying up. She swiped slowly, analyzing the latest CT images. Her brows furrowed. She tapped back to an earlier scan, then forward again. Side-by-side comparisons. The mass, the one that was supposed to be a death sentence. It moved. "Wait, what?" She zoomed in. On one slide, it pressed harder when Caleb lay flat. On another, it seemed to shrink when his neck was angled upward, and the patterns, they didn't align with cancer at all. Swelling, inflammation, maybe even a vascular abnormality, but not a solid tumor. Her heart pounded. She reached for her notebook and started drawing the scanned angles. "This isn't cancer. It can't be." The next morning, Spencer poured black coffee into a mug, looking like he hadn't slept. He hadn't shaved either. "Mr. Miller," Amara said, entering the kitchen with the tablet clutched to her chest. "I need you to see this." He looked up, wary. She hesitated, then laid the tablet on the counter. "It's not acting like a tumor. Look, see how it shifts here? That's not typical of malignant growths. And here, it seems tied to his breathing pattern." Spencer's brows drew together. "I know I'm not a doctor," she added, "but I saw something like this in my brother once. They thought it was a mass, too, but it was inflammation, autoimmune, rare but treatable." Spencer stared at the images, speechless. For a moment, the room was frozen. "I'll talk to them," he said finally. By mid-morning, he stood in a glass-walled conference room with 3 specialists. He laid out the scans, the notes, Amara's theories. They glanced at each other, then at him. One of them sighed. "Mr. Miller," said the lead physician, "you're grasping at miracles. I know it's hard to accept, but that's not how this works." But the mass moved. It's not uncommon for imaging anomalies to occur with end-stage patients. Don't let desperation cloud your judgment. Another added, The maid means well, I'm sure, but she's not qualified. Spencer's jaw tightened. He didn't argue, didn't yell. He just nodded and walked out. That night, he stood outside Caleb's door again, watching Amara read scripture by lamplight. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted, she read softly, her voice gentle, and saves the crushed in spirit. Spencer watched his son's face, calm, attentive, alive. He turned to leave, but paused. For the first time, he didn't feel sure about anything. And in that uncertainty, doubt began to bloom. It started with whispers, quiet ones at first, muted judgment exchanged in corners of the penthouse kitchen. Glances traded when Amara walked into a room. She's just a maid, someone muttered, acting like a miracle worker. Another scoffed. She's making him believe false hope. A third whispered. But Amara kept moving, measured, prayerful, steady. She didn't come for recognition. She came for Caleb, and God hadn't told her to stop. Still it hurt. The warmth that had begun to bloom in the penthouse turned cold again. Only this time wasn't grief. It was jealousy. One morning, she walked into Caleb's room to find the curtains drawn tightly, the soft music gone. The oils she'd used for Caleb's breathing therapy were missing from the side table. His comfort toys had been put back in the closet. Sabotage. She exhaled slowly. Lord, give me grace. Later that afternoon, one of the junior nurses trailed her, clipboard in hand, scribbling each move. Another rolled her eyes when Amara hummed softly to Caleb as he napped. It all came to a head just after dinner. The staff had gathered briefly in the back kitchen when head nurse Collins stepped forward, her voice sharp enough to cut steel. You think you're special, she snapped. You're a maid, Amara, not a therapist, not a nurse. You wipe floors and fluff pillows. Don't mistake kindness for calling. The room froze. Eyes darted toward Spencer's office, just down the hall. Amara stood still, her hands folded, heart pounding, but her voice remained calm. I don't need a title to care, she said quietly, and I don't need permission to love him. A scoff. You're manipulating that poor child for attention. It's disgusting. Silence. Then footsteps. Spencer's voice boomed down the hallway. That's enough. All heads turned. He walked in, sleeves rolled, fury controlled behind narrowed eyes. Pack your things, Nurse Collins. Her face paled. Excuse me. You're fired. Effective immediately. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious. She turned to the others. Are you all going to let this happen? No one spoke. The room was dead quiet. Spencer turned to Amara, his voice softening. I trust you. Caleb's better because of you. If anyone has a problem with that, they can leave with Collins. No one moved. The divide was drawn. Amara blinked, tears stinging, but she held them back. Spencer gave her a small nod before turning away, but something had shifted. For the first time, he chose her, over the professionals, over public opinion, over pride. That night, alone in the guest quarters, Amara knelt by her bed. Father, she whispered, I didn't come here to divide a house, but if you've brought truth into the light, then help me carry it. From down the hall, a sound broke the quiet. Caleb was laughing again, louder this time. It happened just after midnight. The quiet hum of the penthouse was suddenly shattered by the sound of choking. Caleb, Amara bolted upright from the chair beside his bed. Sweetheart, what's happening? Caleb's eyes were wide, desperate. He clutched at his throat, gasping, the skin around his lips paling fast. Within seconds, staff poured into the room. Chaos followed. Oxygen, get the tank. Call emergency services. He's crashing, he's crashing. Spencer arrived in seconds, tie undone, face white. "No, no, please, no," he whispered, dropping to his knees beside his son. "Breathe, buddy. Please breathe." But Amara didn't panic. She didn't freeze. Instead, she reached for her bag and pulled out the small handheld scanner again, Micah's old tracker, the one the doctors dismissed. Her hands trembled, but her spirit stayed steady. "Holy Spirit, give me eyes to see." She placed the scanner gently along Caleb's neck, watching the tiny readings light up in real time. There it was again, the same reactive swelling, the same response to movement and breath. The mass wasn't fixed, it was flaring, and now it was spreading. A memory struck her like lightning, one she hadn't connected before. The hospital renovation Caleb had been in 3 months ago. The nurses mentioned it. The harsh chemical foggers they'd used for sterilization. The day Caleb went downhill. Amara's heart thudded. This isn't cancer. It was an immune crisis. A deep, dangerous inflammation, likely caused by prolonged exposure to toxins. His body was attacking itself. A rare, brutal reaction, but treatable. "Everyone out," she said. "Now." The staff looked at her like she'd lost her mind. Spencer stood. "What are you doing?" She turned to him, steady as stone. "I need you to trust me." He searched her face, then nodded. "Everyone out." When the room cleared, Amara pulled Spencer aside and showed him the readings, the notes she'd been tracking, the swelling chart tied to air quality and exposure. "This isn't cancer," she whispered. "It's poisoning. Severe inflammation. His immune system has been in overdrive since that chemical exposure." Spencer's face twisted. The hospital said. They were wrong. He stared down at the scanner's results, the hand-drawn charts she'd mapped from weeks of silent observation. How could they miss this? They stopped looking. I didn't. Spencer's hands clenched into fists. His voice shook, not with disbelief, but with rage. "You're telling me my son is dying from something treatable? Something they ignored?" Amara nodded slowly. For a long, heavy moment, Spencer said nothing. Then he turned toward the door, shoulders squared, grief hardening into resolve. "Prove it," he whispered. Amara looked up, tears in her eyes, but her spirit on fire. "I will." The hospital conference room felt colder than usual. Stainless steel chairs, laminated reports, and the sterile stench of overconfidence. Amara stood at the head of the long table, her modest blouse pressed, hands trembling slightly as she held Caleb's scanned reports, handwritten notes, and the same outdated scanner the specialists had dismissed from the beginning. She wasn't supposed to be here, but truth didn't need a title. Across from her sat 3 of Caleb's attending doctors, brows arched, arms crossed. Spencer paced behind her like a storm ready to break. "I believe Caleb's condition was misdiagnosed," Amara began. "What you thought was a tumor. It's behaving like an inflammatory response. I've charted it for weeks. When he lies flat, the swelling increases. When he breathes filtered air, it lessens. There's a chemical trigger." The lead physician chuckled under his breath. "Forgive me," he said, "but we're not here for theories. You're a maid. This is not your place." Spencer stopped pacing. He stepped forward. And then the bomb dropped. "No," he said, voice like thunder. "You listen. Because while you were watching my son die, she was saving him." The room went still. You dismissed her, laughed at her. But every breakthrough Caleb's had, every laugh, every smile, every moment of life, it came through her. Not you. Silence. Amara opened the tablet and pulled up the scanner. Caleb sat nearby with an oxygen tube in his nose, his body weak but alert. She gently lifted his chin and positioned his neck upward. "Watch," she said. The scanner lit up. A dip in swelling. A shift in breathing. She opened a sealed container with a faint scent from a common cleaning product. Caleb flinched. The swelling returned almost immediately. "This is an immune response," she said. "He's allergic to something environmental, likely chemical. Not cancer. Not a tumor. His body is reacting, not shutting down." A junior doctor leaned forward, frowned, scanned the readings again. He looked pale. "We misdiagnosed him," he muttered. The lead doctor's face fell. "No, that's not possible." "You said it was terminal," Spencer hissed. "You told me to let my son die." He stepped toward the table, eyes red with rage. "I've paid you millions. I trusted you with my son's life." "Mr. Miller, please. Let's not turn this emotional." "Emotional," Spencer thundered. "You gave him a death sentence." Chairs scraped. Staff exchanged stunned glances. Chaos started to rise, shouting blame, excuses. But Caleb, through the noise, reached out. His tiny hand found Amara's. She closed her fingers around his, grounding herself, grounding Spencer. And for a moment, heaven touched down through a child's fragile grip. Spencer looked at them, his son, and the maid who never stopped seeing him. And he exhaled a breath that felt like months of grief, leaving all at once. "Then we fight," he said quietly. "We fight for the truth." They began treatment at dawn. The new team, handpicked by Spencer from outside the hospital system, moved quickly, loading Caleb's four with immune-calming agents, steroids, and an emergency antihistamine cocktail Amara had researched herself. Still, they weren't sure it would work. The first 30 minutes were terrifying. Caleb's small body trembled beneath the thin blankets. His skin flushed, then faded, then flushed again. Sweat pooled at his hairline. His lips turned gray. One of the machines began to beep fast. Too fast. Heart rate spiking. A nurse called out. Blood pressure dropping. Someone else said. Amara didn't move from his side. Spencer stood behind her, jaw clenched, fists in his hair. "Do something, please. Don't let him go." "Stay with me, buddy." He choked. "Daddy's right here." The lead doctor reached for the crashed cart. "Hold it," Amara said suddenly. All heads turned. She leaned in close, placing both hands gently on either side of Caleb's face. The boy's eyes fluttered, lost between consciousness and fear. She spoke softly, firmly, like she was speaking to the storm itself. "You're safe, Caleb. You're not alone. Breathe with me." She inhaled. Slow. Deep. "Again, sweet boy. Breathe with me." Somewhere in the chaos, he did. Just barely, but he followed. The machine stuttered, and then slowed. The swelling in his throat reduced, visible now even to the naked eye. The redness in his cheeks gave way to a blush of color. His hands stopped shaking. His lips turned pink. A hush fell over the room. The doctor lowered the crash cart. His oxygen stabilizing. Someone whispered. Vitals improving. Amara stayed where she was, forehead pressed gently to Caleb's, whispering something soft and steady. A prayer, maybe, or just love in the form of breath. Spencer dropped into a chair, overcome, eyes glassy with tears. "He's coming back," he whispered. "God, he's really coming back." The lead doctor stepped forward, stunned. We were minutes away from losing him. Amara looked up, still holding Caleb's hand. He didn't need another doctor. He needed someone who saw the fight still left in him. The team watched in awe as Caleb's chest rose and fell in steady rhythm, slow, strong, sure. "It's a miracle," one of the nurses murmured. Spencer didn't answer. He just walked to the side of the bed and knelt beside his son. Then, for the first time in years, he bowed his head. "Thank you," he whispered through sobs. "Thank you, God." Amara closed her eyes too. her heart swelling with something deeper than relief, reverence. She thought of Micah, of all the battles lost, all the nights she wondered if her pain had a purpose. Now she knew, and Caleb, alive, warm, breathing, clung to her hand like a child who'd just been pulled from the deep, because he had. Laughter echoed through the halls of the Miller penthouse, not forced or polite, real. Caleb's laughter. He tore down the hallway in mismatched socks, cape flying behind him, cheeks flushed with color. A nurse shouted playfully, chasing after him with a paper crown he'd left behind. The same boy who'd once barely opened his eyes was now running. Running. Spencer stood in the living room, watching from the doorway. A smile tugged at the corners of his mouth, unpolished, unfamiliar, but real. He sipped his coffee slowly, not because he needed the caffeine, but because the moment felt worth savoring. Every day since Caleb's recovery had been a kind of resurrection. The silence that once ruled the penthouse had been replaced by music, cartoons, kitchen noises, and prayer whispered under breath. Light now streamed through windows that once stayed shuttered. Even Spencer had begun setting his phone down during breakfast, really seeing his son, asking questions he never used to care about. And Amara? She had quietly returned to her duties, folding sheets, tidying rooms, humming softly like nothing had changed. But everything had. One afternoon, as she packed her small tote near the front door, Caleb ran in and froze. "You're not leaving," he said, eyes wide. She turned, startled. "I'm just heading home for the weekend, sweetheart." His lip quivered. Then, without warning, he wrapped his arms around her waist, clutching tightly. "Don't go," he whispered. "Your family." Amara stood frozen, breath caught in her throat. Across the room, Spencer had seen the whole thing. He stepped forward slowly, his expression unreadable. "He's right," he said quietly. Amara looked up. "You're not staff anymore, Amara," he continued, voice thick. "You're part of what saved us, what rebuilt us. I don't know what to call that exactly, but I know it doesn't belong on a payroll." Her eyes filled. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. Spencer gave a soft smile. "Then don't say anything. Just stay." She nodded, tears falling freely now. "I'd like that." Later that evening, Caleb sat at the kitchen island, crayons spread across the marble counter. His tongue stuck out in concentration as he drew on a piece of thick white paper. Amara sat beside him, sipping tea. Spencer leaned against the counter, watching. "What are you making?" Spencer asked. Caleb grinned and held it up. A simple picture. A woman with curly hair and an apron. A boy with a cape. A man in a suit. All three holding hands, smiling. Above it, in crooked letters, Caleb had written, "My second chance." Amara pressed a hand to her chest. Spencer turned away for a moment, eyes misted. "I think it's perfect," Amara whispered. And as the sun dipped behind the skyline, the penthouse no longer felt like a place where sorrow lived. It was a home now, not because of medicine, not because of money, but because love, quiet, faithful, unseen, had done what doctors couldn't. It healed.
If you've ever been dismissed, overlooked, or told your voice didn't matter, share this story with someone who needs to be reminded that love, not pride, is what truly saves. Like and subscribe to hear more stories where the underdog rises. And tell us in the comments, have you ever been underestimated only to prove everyone wrong?